Hi, this is Ed, and I'm in Southern California, and welcome to Global TV Talk Show. So this edition is going to be Global LatAm 3.0, and that's because this is the third in a new series going deeper into the economic development and the corporate relocations involved, and therefore talent attraction and development and retention. Inbound, outbound, Latin America is on a high growth curve right now. And just recently, Mexico has overtaken China as the US's largest trading partner. Can you imagine that? So we're going to get into that. And our website is going to show you graphics, and you'll see that after the program. This will be a live recording. It is well organized, but it's unscripted on purpose because we want to have reality. We also want to keep it interesting for you, the audience, and we want to keep a feeling, a vibe of spontaneity. So with us is Stephen Howard, who's an author of 22 books on leadership, including the bestseller that's out there right now. It's called Humany, Humony, humanyleadership.com. It's really interesting. Take a look at it. It's all about coaching and developing talent, and therefore engaging better and retaining talent. So that's the ROI. Also with us is a gentleman for the first time, also from Mexico City, as is Stephen. Let's welcome Carlos Buenos, and he is with a manpower group company called Experis. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. He will. Carlos is going to talk to us about, and I'm going to read this, top 5 soft skills IT employers are looking for right now. IT area priorities in Mexico, main areas of focus to address the challenges of the IT industry today, and the future of work. Well, everyone wants to know about that, especially with AI and tech rapidly expanding even more than ever. So this is really going to be an interesting show, that's for sure. Very useful. Also with us is Kim Condon, who has been with a $5 billion LA company called Herbalife Nutrition, and she was worldwide VP of talent. And all things considered, she's recently retired from that and now will be helping other companies on a consulting basis. And she's going to be talking about the 3 Ps. And we'll be right back with that. And Sergey Gorbatov will be with us from Madrid, if all things go well. Sergey has a long career in pharmaceutical and has recently started his own gig, and he moved back to Madrid, and he'll be calling in from there. And we're going to learn all about how you and me can gain an edge, how we can develop an edge in our thinking and in our practices, because that leads to better business, of course. And also on the docket is Norman Vargas. Norman was with us on LatAm 2.0 recently. He's with Premier DS, Premier Destination Services. He's based in Costa Rica, and hopefully he'll be able to join us today. So, okay, stand by. We'll be right back with Global TV Talk Show, Global LatAm 3.0. Hi, this is Ed in Southern California, actually in Palm Desert, California right now. And beautiful morning here. Yesterday was a high of 103, but right now it's like 71 and loving it. In Mexico City is Stephen Howard and Carlos Bueso. In LA is Kim Congdon. And in Costa Rica, Norman Vargas. Hello, everybody, and thank you for being on Global TV. This edition is called Global LatAm 3.0, which is the third iteration of this new focus on economic development, talent development, and how people and companies are doing it today. So first, I want to go to Stephen Howard and tell us about yourself and your book, meaning our audience out there in the world. So you're on.
Thank you, Ed, and good to see everybody again. I'm an author of 22 books. I do leadership mentoring. I do keynote speaking at organizational conferences and association conferences. And the new book is called Humany, Humony, Humany Leadership. I created the word. It's not yet in the dictionary. I hope it will be someday. And it combines humanity, and harmony, and it focuses on the need for leaders to be people-centric and to create workplaces of well-being and harmony, and that will give them the desired results rather than just focusing on results, which pushes people into burnout and gives you short-term results, but not long-term results, and increases employee turnover, which is very costly these days.
My job is as a happy talk show host is to bring people together into what I call the global meeting room. Here we are. From across time and space, from across borders and cultures, from across industries. The idea is to exchange ideas about which these leaders that you're looking at right now are really well steeped. But this is show business, if you will. We're on TV, and it's going to be seen in China, in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa. Over the next year, more than 100,000 audience views are easily expected because of our network already established and growing. So from this point of view, some things may sound a little bit repetitive to our consistent audience out there, but we want to go deeper because we're focusing in on Latin America and its economic development, which is terrific. Just recently, Mexico apparently became the U.S. trading partner #1, bigger than China, which I thought was colossal. So, Stephen, you're from the LA area, in Mexico City now, a year or two. What's your perspective on Mexico overtaking China as the U.S.'s largest trading partner? What does that mean to you?
It means Mexico is growing. Latin America is going to be growing. There's two reasons for this. One is Mexico is growing. Secondly, a number of even Chinese organizations, but a lot of Asian companies have moved their manufacturing or their assembly operations to the northern parts of Mexico, which allows them duty-free entry into both the United States and Canada. So it's not just U.S., but it's also the Canadian market. On top of that, there's a little political rift between Washington, D.C. and Beijing these days, and it's impacting trade. And I'm just reading an article today that American companies in China are feeling less than happy these days. There's new Chinese regulations within China. Manufacturing is difficult. The supply chain issues that came up through COVID that continue today. So Mexico is ideally positioned. Mexico, by the way, is the 15th largest economy in the world, if I'm not mistaken, and it's projected to be as much as the 5th largest within the next 10 to 15 years. So people, if you're not looking in Mexico, you're making a mistake. That's why I moved here 3 years ago. So I think this is the opportunity.
So I live in San Diego and in downtown. I'm not there today. I'm in Palm Desert, which is about 150 miles north of San Diego. 100 miles east of LA, out in the desert. And right down Highway 111 is Mexico, about an hour drive. Mexicali, I think. No, Mexicali or Calexico, and that's near Monterey, and which is a huge manufacturing center, especially for automobiles, not just from the U.S., but from Germany and Japan, Korea, and then they ship them into the U.S. And so this is not a new story of economic growth, but now is getting huge. So also on the program today is Kim Condon, who just retired recently from Herbalife Nutrition, which happens to be a $5 billion company in LA. And you were, for many years, head global HR, global talent, VP, and all things related. And you retired to take your three Ps into the consulting world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, for the next few months, I actually retired because I have loved every minute of, being a corporate executive. But the next few months, I committed to myself that until the end of the year, I'm really going to be much more focused on my family. So I'm off to Africa next week for a few weeks. So I'm very excited, but that's not what you guys want to know about. So just an aside. Yes, my three Ps are the power of people, performance, and profit. And the idea being that if you create environments where people, feel that optimism, that excitement, have accountability, that it's really contagious. And when you start with the people, the profit will follow. And
Sounds like,
I've seen that time
Stephen,
and
it
time
sounds
again.
like a book title, doesn't it?
We help
Excuse
you
me.
take notes.
Maybe 23. I know. That's so funny. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm looking forward to the future from that standpoint. I'd say the thing that I was when I was listening to Stephen, what I think's really changed in terms of Mexico as a partner and Latin America is, before, yes, there was a lot of manufacturing that moved down, but for example, at Herbalife, we've moved hundreds and hundreds of jobs to Mexico that, are white collar jobs. And that's what's changed. Like, with AI and with other technical tools, all of our web designs moved down there. And then also because of technology, we've been able to uh, take the knowledge transfer has been easy to do. So I think that's really where um, fortunes of Mexico will continue to rise because it's the types of jobs that are becoming available there. And that's very different, right? Because they require the education and the professional level that perhaps was not shifting from the US before.
So people, performance, and profit. So in order to get performance, you're not cracking the whip. You're coaching
Right.
them to be different, right? Better.
That's right. That's right. I always think of myself as a business partner, not just to the business, but also to the employees as well as the shareholders. And the thing about it is that in the end, we all, if we have a common purpose, and I think that's the goal that I always have, is trying to help people understand that hook. Like, why should I want to perform? Like, what's exciting about it? And so, for example, at Herbalife, there was really three things. Do the right thing. Um, uh, oh my goodness, now I'm having a brain freeze.
Stephen,
So
it sounds like it's perfect for what you're teaching.
It is. I mean, Kim and I have very similar philosophies on leadership, and I think she should write the book, not me. I'll help her. I'll help her publish it.
That's
you write
funny.
the book and I'll execute it. How about that?
Okay.
Because I like getting my hands dirty.
Speaking about that, there's a nursery on the way up I-15 that says, "You buy it, we'll plant them." That's almost the same thing.
It is the same thing. It kind of is. Yeah. Because I do get a tremendous amount of joy in terms of just seeing that in practice. Just seeing the business do well, people continuing to develop and grow within an organization instead of feeling like they have to move outside of an organization, which means leaders have to be not only capable of developing people, but also capable of letting go. That's a big issue. You have people that um, think that their job is to really do everything and go down in the weeds. Huge mistake. rookie mistake, except that, people that have long careers are still making that rookie mistake. And I do think that's the difference in terms of not only performance for the overall company, because people are doing stuff that's below their pay grade, but also it's discouraging and doesn't help people continue to develop in their roles and take on more.
Thank you, Kim. We'll be back. Carlos Bueso, thank you. So are you
Hello.
a people manager, or do you just deal with the big money customers?
Well, I do both. I'm the MD for Experis in North Latin America. Experis is a IT talent technology company of Manpower Group. So we are basically focusing on talent in the region and how that's evolving. And as Kim said, the profile of many of these um, uh, folks that are being scouted to join companies in Mexico, it's increasing, right? So now from the IT world, which are normally higher paying jobs with, in most cases, university degrees, education, we're seeing a large trend in that, right? In near shoring, offshoring in Mexico, in many other places in LatAm as well. Actually, Norman can probably allude to that, but Costa Rica is an important market. And Colombia is also a strong market in offshoring. Mexico, however, is tied to the US, right? We have a border and a wall there, but a border, and that's why we call it nearshoring, right? Same time zone. Basically, countries are very close by, so executives from US or Canada can travel back and forth quickly. And what we're seeing is that trend where a lot of global companies are setting up shop in Mexico, initially around manufacturing. That's changing now to a lot of IT services. So a lot of software development being done in the region, creating larger demand. And that is also showing in the fact that close to 73% of companies that are in projects of digitalization in Mexico are having trouble finding the right candidates. And that's also of that same effect that nearshoring is booming, growing approximately 30% annually at this point. And a lot of that talent is being hired. And so our job is to sense the market, understand the trends, where and what companies are hiring in what cities. As you said, in North Mexico is very manufacturing oriented. Then you move into Center and Guadalajara, Mexico City, and those are more of IT hubs in larger terms. So Guadalajara even has a municipality that they call it the Silicon Valley of Mexico, right? And this is booming, and you see a lot of the big tech companies, IBM, Oracle, Cisco's, all those companies investing heavily in that city as well.
So let me ask you a couple of questions here from your view. Now, your background is tech,
Yes,
Cisco, Rackspace. So,
Microsoft. Mhm.
yeah, big time. So, what do you see the top 5 skills, soft skills? But they're no longer
Okay.
soft, right? I mean, these are
Well,
important.
yeah. Well, soft skills lately have been some people are starting to change the name, and now they're calling them power skills. And
Power.
to me, it makes so much sense because it's what separates um, future leaders and people that have the ability to develop themselves within a corporate environment or on their own entrepreneur endeavor. And what we're seeing, and it's interesting, Edwin, that you asked this question because probably up to 3 years ago, companies would always provide us with technology skills that they require for a specific job. That is no longer the case. They do provide us a technology skill set that the role needs, but they are also requesting specific skills as well. In some cases, for pretty much all of these nearshoring projects, you also have language skills that you need English, or you need other languages. I've had situations where customers ask me for Japanese, for people that can speak Japanese because they're testing games that are coming out of Japan. When you look at soft skills or power skills, you're seeing collaboration as one of them, problem solving, the capacity to also flow with changes of the company, to adapt quickly to some of these changes. So in general terms, companies normally look for leadership skills, problem solving skills, and the capacity again to adapt to new technologies. So even though the individual might possess that skill, it's important that companies also provide the right training and programs in place to continue growing these individuals.
So I want to get back to you in a couple of minutes about the future of work. Everybody will jump in on this. Norman, do you and DS, Premier DS, help these people find source talent and then manage their relocation?
We work in the second time. We manage the relocation, but as everybody was saying, Mexico is playing a starring role currently in the world because it's also been rated as the #1 expat destination. And this is a lot of work for everybody because a lot of the big companies are bringing expatriates to manage those manufacturing facilities all over the country, and they are located all over the place in Mexico. And why are they doing that? Well, on the one hand, as a country, Mexico has a lot to offer, and it's very attractive to companies from a business standpoint. But then thinking about the personal side of the families, Mexico offers so much and has so many options for expats to come and live there that people are finding it more and more attractive every day to come and live in Mexico because of everything that Mexico offers. So we at Premier Diaz, what we are doing is developing our own staff to provide excellent service to these people. And even though they are happy to come to Mexico, we as a destination services company and immigration services company, what we do is enhance that experience and make and have them say, wow, yeah, this is the best choice that I could have made. We do not source the talent that is coming to Mexico, but we do play a big part on the decision-making process by providing excellent service and showcasing everything that the country can offer to them. By living here, school, security, access to facilities and everything else. So on top of the fact that Mexico as an economy is still growing, from a family and from a personal standpoint, it's offering everybody just about everything that they need to comfortably live in Mexico.
So safety as an issue. Sorry, I have to ask. I mean, yeah, I live in San Diego, so every day something's happening on the border. So is it a real problem elsewhere in Mexico?
Well, our clients have their security procedures that they have followed internally, and we comply with them. For example, they could say, okay, we're only allowing our expats to move into neighborhood A or neighborhood B, and they have to live in a gated community, or they can only live in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor on, stuff like that. So based on their criteria is how we show properties and locations for expatriates to live. Safety and security is an issue in a lot of countries in Latin America where we do business, but companies are fully aware of that. So they provide us the guidelines, and we follow the guidelines and ensure that we comply with the guidelines they provide for the safety of their expatriates and their families as well.
So Kim, back to the 3 Ps and the future of work, if we could move for the next 15 minutes into this topic. It's never-ending topic. So
never-ending topic.
Future of work means hybrid, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that as much as some executives really want to put that genie back in the bottle, they're not going to be putting that genie back in the bottle. Now, I also think that the future is not fully remote. We saw that we did lose something, right? For one thing, mental health issues increased as a result of people being isolated, and that's not good for anybody, right? But it's still it's an ongoing struggle. I think it's going to take some time to figure out where that that balance, that perfect balance is for people. I know at Herbalife, just as of October 1st, it's going to be moving back from 3 days a week in the office to 2 days a week in the office. And part of that was because people just weren't coming in. So like, well, how about if we do two? I mean, it's a very interesting time, that it feels like a dance with all these companies and employees to figure out, where's the tolerance on both sides. But one of the big advantages of hybrid is if someone's only coming in, let's say once or twice a week or once a week, it really expands your ability to hire people, to hire talent. Especially like Los Angeles. Oh my gosh. I worked in Beverly Hills at the Academy of Motion Pictures for 5 years. I live in Hermosa. It took me an hour and a half each way. It's only like 14 miles. So it just expands if I was only doing that once a week, twice a week, like that's no problem. But after 5 years, I was like, oh, that's a burnout situation for your employees, which is the opposite of, performance, right? You're taking away from your performance. So I definitely see it as hybrid. Also, the companies are really moving to true global setups where you do have huge centers in Guadalajara, for example, because that's actually where we are, or in another place that we have a really large business center where we've moved a lot of jobs is Krakow in Poland. So one of the biggest advantages, and it was touched on earlier regarding Mexico, and why I see this as a continuous trend is, it's exhausting to work in global companies because if you're in the US, you're on 6 a.m. meetings. If you're in China, you're on 10 p.m. meetings every single day when you're needing to talk to the whole world. And if you're in a situation where you can make it so it's not so exhausting for people, again, that performance continues to rise because you're having people focus on, they're able to use their brains because they're not exhausted.
Interesting. So let's get back to the Hollywood background and, of course, the writer's strike and the actor strike and all that. And I don't know if you looked at the news this morning in detail, where they were talking about some of the deals about AI and how AI can be used, but writers cannot be forced by any boss into using it. And the writer's material is protected by part of that. And whoever wrote the news story, I think it was the New York Times, was, oh no, that was Variety. I was reading Variety this morning. So their take on it was the writers got everything they wanted from day one of the strike. And why did it take so long?
Yeah. Why did it take so long? Because of the fact that the studios and production saw an opportunity to really cut costs, and they wanted that opportunity to really utilize that the writer's work without necessarily having to pay for it. And on the other hand, I thought it was interesting in terms of that they can't force people to use AI. However, and yes, they got that, but really, what does that mean? It just means they're not going to get paid more. They're not paid by the hour. So I don't know how big a win that. I don't know how big a win that is. I mean, for me, it's like, oh, okay, just put an outline there, and then I'll use my creativity to go from there. It's another one of those things that's a real dance, right? Because you look at technology, like Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a huge company. It no longer exists. Why? Part of the reason is they're like, oh, Netflix, like let's fight this instead of let's figure out, how we can morph our business. Because if you don't continually morph your business, you go out of business, right? So it'll be interesting to see in its implementation. But I'm happy for the fact that the strike is over. That's for sure. It is a really negative impact on so many people that I know, and So
Well, you don't
it'll be interesting.
realize in Southern California, particularly LA Metro, you don't realize how huge the industry is and
Yeah,
how impactful it is. Stephen, what do you
yeah.
think about all this?
Oh, I'm glad it's over. I think Hollywood has just learned, and I think Detroit is about to learn. It's a phrase I've used frequently. I didn't create it. Actually, Steve Cadigan came up with it originally, but I've sort of used a lot. Is the war for talent is over, and talent has won. And the auto workers have a great phrase going on right now. It takes the average auto worker something like 300 years of salary to earn what the CEO of GM earns in 1 year. It's so the split, the gap between senior executives, and yeah, they want to, I almost laughed when Kim said the studios want to cut costs, and I said, yeah, they want to cut costs so they increase their bonuses. Quite frankly, yeah, it is true, and it's a shame. That's what the other thing. Bring this back to Latin America a little bit, and I think again Mexico. People don't realize how big the film, the animation, the sound industry is in Mexico. I mean, Pixar now uses Mexican talent for their movies, their animation. A lot of that used to go to the Philippines, and a lot of it's now coming here to Mexico. And I think the one thing holding that back a little bit is what Carlos referenced, the language skills. And so I know there's a school here that is teaching sound engineering and animation and cinematography. And they're actually, I think, going to start teaching English classes because that's the one gap that the younger generation has that's interested in these, in video games as well. They're interested in these technologies, but they haven't grown up in an English environment or schools that taught English as a second language. So when that happens, you're going to see a lot more of that kind of work coming here. As Kim referenced earlier, also website work.
So isn't that language training, translation, an AI thing? It could be done right away.
It can, but let me tell you something, Ed. It can, but it's not. It's not smooth. I actually wrote a 4-page document yesterday in English and went on a website and translated it to Spanish, gave it to my girlfriend, and I think she found about 14 or 15 errors in just a 3.5-page document that needed to be fixed. So it wasn't quite right. So again, AI is good for some things, but as Kim referenced, as a first draft, maybe. But then somebody's got to sit down and polish it. The written word, grammar, techniques. I help people publish books. I'm helping a lady in Suriname publish a book that she's writing right now, and her English is pretty good, but she doesn't know in grammar. She knows the words, she knows how to speak English, but I have to edit her book for grammatical purposes in order to make it a professional looking book. So, the things that AI can't do yet.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me just add to Stephen, because you're so right. And it's also, there's Spanish and there's Castilian Spanish, and there's lots of different Spanishes.
Yeah.
So, it's a little bit too homogenous.
Yeah, well, there's English, there's Singaporean English, there's Australian English, and then there's
Absolutely.
American
British English. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, good point.
And then there's LA English. So Carlos, what say you about the future of work? Because you're in the people business.
Right. So, well, I do agree with some of the comments that Kim made regarding hybrid work and how it has changed really, the way we work today. As we all know, during the pandemic, we got so good at doing it by force, not by election, that companies immediately found that it did work. But on the other hand, employees liked the idea even though after a couple of years it got really hard and people started talking about mental health and all that. But the idea of being able to work out of home and avoid traffic as we have here in Mexico and in any major city, those sort of things, it seems to bring a good balance to employees and employers on how to be more productive and provide people with the flexibility of doing it the way they feel more comfortable. Now, we need to understand there are industries that can do it, others can't, right? If you're in the services industry and you work at Starbucks, you cannot do it remotely, right? And so there are many jobs that require retail, obviously in particular. They need to be there full time, 5, 6 days a week in some cases. So we need to understand where we are, what sort of jobs can be done remotely, which cannot. In the IT sector, a majority of the jobs in development, in cybersecurity, in cloud management can be done remotely. But when you look at managing or providing security services to a data center, well, you might need to be there present because you're working with actual boxes and cables. So that's an important aspect that leaders need to understand the industry and the type of work that their people do, and some might be able to do it remotely and some others. And agree with the fact also that in IT you have clusters of expertise. And by that I mean that you can find specific expertise in an IT technology in a city in larger offer than in some others. So you have the ability also to bring people from different places, different cities or countries that have the right talent, and you can build this global virtual teams. And when you talked about language, well, in those cases, even though you can have AI translating many languages, in some cases you need to be in a Zoom call like this, and you need to be able to interact and not have a machine translating everything, especially internally when you're developing projects or new products. That conversation needs to happen real time, and if it cannot be done face to face, at least it needs to be very effective digitally.
Yeah, thank you. Norman, let's talk about the relocation industry for a second, and not from a specific point of view, but the idea of coaching the assignee, the corporate client, to do better or to do things differently so that they become more valuable to the employer while they're doing their assignment. And because the idea is to get that talent re-employed somewhere beyond the date of completion, not left off and kicked out or squeezed out, or he quits or she quits, right? So the idea that you play, the role that you play, is actually really vital to the global talent development picture.
For sure.
Because I don't know to what extent companies coach their talent that is on a specific assignment. Stephen, if you could join this, when you were on assignment in Asia, for instance, with a bank or with, I forget who else you were with. Was it Coca-Cola?
No, Time Magazine. Time Magazine.
No, Time Magazine, right. Did they help you do your job better rather than just dictate what to do? Did they give you coaching like you're talking about now?
No, not really. I mean, I had one boss. My last boss at Citibank was a good mentor, a good leader. But no, back in the, I mean, you're dating me. This is decades ago, and the relocation business was very different. I mean, we used a moving company that shipped my goods from Dallas to Singapore. When I arrived in Singapore, the local secretary took my passport and said, "I'll go get your visa for you." So, all those services. One of your sponsors from last year, if I recall right, used to help people buy their car before they arrived. It took me weeks to find an automobile on my own. I had no help from the company, no help from a relocation service. That industry has changed dramatically these days, and for the better, I think. I mean, I wish I was an expat. I wish I could be an expat today and get those services.
There has been a lot of change in the industry indeed. I've been doing this for 23 years now, and you could never lose the human touch. We talk about AI, we talk about automation, we talk about apps here and apps there, and click here and click there. But moving is considered, if not the second, the third most stressful thing that you can do in your life. So being there for the expats through the whole journey is what makes it, what seals or breaks the deal. So now companies are so focused on giving the best they can. Budgets have come, they're cutting budgets, and they're trying to get as much as possible, but then budget is always an issue when it comes to relocating. There are several programs. There are programs that they provide to their assignees. For example, they have one especially for U.S. domestic relocation, when they say, okay, here's a lump sum of $10,000. You move from Dallas to Houston, and I'll see you there in 2 weeks. So they just say, here's the money, move. But then there's also the programs, the VIP programs, where they're very hand-holding. We call them white glove services, where when your shipment arrives to the house, you put everything in cupboards and you make the beds and you do everything, because that's the way to welcome someone into the new country. There is also the cultural adjustment programs as well, where they have a company that gives you those trainings to see, okay, this is how they behave in Singapore. I myself have been an expat twice, and we had those trainings before we got to the places where we were moving, and it was very interesting to see it in theory, but then to get there and see the people behaving like that, it prepares you to do that. So many companies are offering those options.
And it made you more comfortable.
Indeed, it did. It did, because you knew what the reactions are going to be. You would understand, like, for example, we lived in the Philippines for 2 years. People are very friendly, but then when it comes to making plans, they rather make plans with their friends that they've known forever than with you. So it taught us not to feel left out, because we were not locals. We were there for a short period of time, and they're not used to getting close to other people. So it's these programs that also help to the success of the assignment, because then the expatriate and their families are going to be ready for what's to come. It's not the same if you throw someone there and just like figure it out. But then these programs also contribute to the success of the assignment, to the long-lasting commitment to say, wow, this company is not only thinking about me as someone who's giving results, but as a person. They care about my family, that my children, my pets. Pets have become a part of the family. So there's also that care that you need to pay to every detail of the family that is moving, to make sure that the assignment is successful, the employee is healthy holistically speaking, right? And enjoying the assignment, and that also helps them being productive and comfortable altogether.
So let me ask you a question, Norm. I'm going to relocate to Costa Rica.
Okay.
God willing, someday. But let's make believe that I'm on assignment with Data General or whatever. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anybody there. Mm-hmm. Now, I just heard you say that, locals want to stay with people who they've known and they're comfortable with, of course. So how do I fit in? Do I have a mental health problem coming? Because I'm lonely, or would you help me be introduced to other expats who have been on this track and figured it out?
Okay. Your first network is the people at work. That's the first network that every expat has, the people at work, and then who you as an expat would relate to, and then start expanding your network from there. Talking about the families, yes. For example, if you have a wife or a husband and you have children, the mom's group at school, if they're of school age. Then if you join a gym, then what we do is we guide you. We don't tell you, talk to these people because these people are expats. In some countries where there are large communities of expats, there are support groups for newcomers. So like the spouses would make a group and say, okay, this is the group of spouses from PepsiCo in Panama, and we welcome everybody, join us. We have volunteer activities and we do sports and we do this and we do that. So it's a way to expand your network. Nevertheless, there are also companies who have the employee assistant programs in the event that you have mental health issues. There is a program for different companies that they provide to their employees in those cases if they need it. But we, as your first contact here, we as your destination services company, we have a large network of providers that may cater to your specific needs. For example, you may say, oh, I like to play golf. Oh yeah, there's a golf club here and here and here. We can take you there so you can visit it and decide whether you want to join it or not. Or my kid likes horseback riding. Oh yeah, there's a horseback riding school. So the way that we would cater our services based on your needs. Basically, that's what we would do. We would cater the services based on your needs, and obviously what your company has approved for the services that we should be providing to you as an expat.
So let me ask you now, let's say I have a dual career issue
Mm-hmm.
and I'm being relocated.
Mm-hmm.
Could you introduce me to employers or, figure that out somehow?
Normally, destination services company are not job placement agencies, and some companies would have programs that are called spouse assistance programs that they would hire from somebody else, and they would guide the spouse or the spouse in how to put together a resume, how to source interviews, and how to conduct themselves in the new country accordingly so that they fit what the customs of that specific country are. So that's mostly what some companies provide for some of their expats in different locations.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Kim and Carlos, as we come to a close, if you could address that and then go into your own closing. Kim, did you relocate people with a dual career problem?
Yes, we have, and actually that's been a killer of a number of deals trying to get people to come on board.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. It's good to bring up. So typically what we found was the most helpful is, we work with different companies like Right Management and Lee Hecht Harrison that are specifically around outplacement for people that are leaving the company. Well, in effect, that spouse is leaving their company, and so what we've done is included that in our contract with them in the case of relocation where it's needed, and honestly with moderate success, to be honest. Because it's also you have to have assistance with the visas, and that takes time, and so it depends on the level of engagement and the level of patience that the spouse has to sort of get back to what they want to do. But no, we've seen it. I mean, I would say about 60-40. It works about 60% of the time, which is not awesome, but it's not bad.
Yeah, Carlos?
Well, if a dual income family relocates, then you call Experis or Manpower, and we can help you with placements. That's our core business, right? But I think in general terms, important to understand also the local market, what it's doing well in the global economy, and that can also give you insights into which type of companies might be hiring or industries that might be more active than others. So it depends country by country. I personally work very closely in the IT area. So I can tell you, well, what sort of jobs are being open, in what countries, what sort of companies are also hiring. In many cases, as we discussed earlier on the call, a lot of global companies, right, which are becoming more global in the sense of having teams distributed around the world, are also allowing this situation where when you relocate with family to work remotely in companies that are not necessarily based locally, right? So you can have a full remote experience working with some of your, Fortune 500 companies that might look for specific talent that you have, and they don't need you to be in the office, right? So those are the things that are important to keep in mind when this situation happens, because it's doable. And I think we're in probably the best time ever to find jobs remotely and with global companies or local companies doing business globally.
And
Yeah,
if
one
I
of the
may,
questions that, go ahead.
yeah. If I may, now we also have the advantage of the nomad visas that a lot of people are taking advantage of. So you don't, if you can do your job remotely, 100% remotely, you have the opportunity. And I'm going to talk about something that I just that I just saw recently, is that, for example, in Panama, same-sex couples are not recognized. So the choice that the same-sex couples have is for one of the spouses to apply for a digital nomad visa that allows that person to live legally in Panama for 9 months, and then they can renew it for another 9 months, and then for another 9 months, avoiding the fact that yes, the government does not recognize same-sex marriages, but now there is a way for the non-expat spouse to move to the country and live there legally. So currently there are choices. You just have to be very aware of what's available out there, and not say no. So that you would not say, oh no, we're a same-sex couple and we can't go to Panama because I cannot get a visa. There are choices. It's just a matter of looking into what works for the family, if it is the right moment to do it, if it's the right thing to do, if it is what's right for the family as a whole at that point. But there are choices that in this global economy that we live now, allow people to take on expatriate assignments.
I thank
Should
you
that be
all
the
for
case?
doing this. This has really been informative, Norman and Kim, Carlos, and thank you, Carmen, and of course, Stephen. So please come back. Let's do this again, the next iteration, and I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Ed. Looking
Bye,
forward.
everyone. Have a good
Bye-bye
rest of
now.
your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.